few days ago we made a ciabatta and posted the photos to our Instagram page, and we've had quite a few people who seemed interested in making a white loaf with a sourdough starter. So in this video we're just going to show you the process where we start with a T45 flour, which is a white plain flour which seems to be in decent supply at the moment. So a lot of the flours in our local supermarkets and shops seem to be in quite low supply. So with this plain T45 flour, a bit of olive oil, quite a high hydration, so this is an 80% hydration mix. We're going to combine that with our sourdough starter, exactly as we would for a sourdough loaf, but we're just going to use plain white flour, which is, in actual fact, this could be something that you haven't seen much of yet, because most of the sourdoughs that we see, they have a mix of all sorts of different flours, predominantly brown breads, but you can just use your sourdough starter to make a really delicious white loaf. We love them. I think, in fact, this ciabatta recipe is even our favourite sourdough recipe at the moment. And with it's really nice to be eating a white loaf again. So the first phase of our ciabatta sourdough will be the autolyse phase, which is where we're going to just add 400 milliliters of water to 500 grams of plain flour. We've got T45 flour, that was, as we said before, our available flour. If you can get Italian 00 flour, that's going to be more authentic. And then we've gone in with 30 mils of olive oil. So we've got quite a high hydration. We've then got olive oil. It's going to be put some nice flavour in there, especially with that nice sourdough fermentation flavour. Here we are. This is about an hour later. Going in with our sourdough starter. I hope you've seen our video saying how to get that really good and moussey like our one is here. We're going to add about 100 grams. You see the scales underneath there. It's about 100 grams of that going in there too. And at this point, you just want to start your stretch and folds. There's no kneading as such. You're just going to need to, every half an hour, pull your dough up from each side, sort of work round, imagining there are 4 sides, and just stretch up and fold over. I mean, at the start, this is it's just a big mess of flour, but you'll see as we go on that it gets smoother, it starts to pull together, and it starts to behave like a dough, where you can really start to see that it's the gluten's developing. It's becoming like more of a solid dough. We're just going to, as we said before, we'll just go around each side. So we've got, imagining 4 sides, and once you've done that, you just cover with cling film, put a tea towel over the tops. Here we are after our first half an hour. So you can really see that it looks smoother, and we're just going to do the same as before. Treat the dough like it has 4 sides. Just turn 4 times, and each time you turn, get your hand under there, pull it out, stretch it up, and then try and stick it over on the other side. This is going to give your dough some structure. Once you've done your 4 sides, just cover again with cling film, put your tea towel over the top, leave another half an hour, and then come back and do the same thing. We're about an hour in at this point, coming in to do our 3rd stretch and fold. Very important, you don't forget to put salt into your sourdough loaves. It's not only going to give it flavour, it helps to temper the yeast, so it doesn't get out of control. So just again, it may be getting repetitive at this phase, but just so that everyone sees every step of how we make our ciabatta, we're going in again for another stretch and fold. It's just each side, treating it as if it's got 4 sides, reach underneath, pull it out, stretch it over the top, and stick it down. And you can really see now that this looks like a ball of dough. It's not like the sort of cow pat that we had at the start. It's making something that is going to resemble what we want to bake with, and what we'll be shaping in towards the end of the video. So just do that again and cover with cling film, throw a cloth over it. And after you've finished your final stretch and fold, whether you do this 4 times or 5 times, you're going to want to cover again with your cling film, put your tea towel over your bowl, and then leave this either overnight somewhere cool, so for 12 hours you want to have that in the fridge or maybe on a windowsill if it's a cool time of year. But if not, about 6 hours at room temperature should do it. And once you're done, you should have something that looks a bit like this. So it's all blown up. You can see there's air in there. It feels like it's inflated. The air bubbles are the fermentation. So just I like to use my induction top because it's just very smooth and non-stick. Put a bit of flour down, not too much because you don't want to lower the hydration ratio of your dough. Just work your way around. Try not to drag or tear your dough because you've got some really nice air in there now. So just pick it away from the bottom of the bowl, out onto your flour surface. And then you're going to want to just sort of pull and stretch it out just a little bit. Gently again because you don't want to lose your air that's in there. Give it a bit of a stretch. Keep from this point, you have the top side is your sticky side, which is going to end up being the bottom of your bread. And you're going to try and pull your dough in and stick it down to itself, stretching over again. And just repeat this, working your way along your dough. Then pick up from this end close to you, roll it in, and just roll and tuck, roll and tuck, and just try and form like a nice tight kind of ball. And you can see it's like slightly loaf shaped. It's not there yet, but this is the first step of shaping. And after this point, we are going to cover again with cling film and a tea towel, and we're going to what's called bench rest. So we're going to leave about half an hour in this shape, and by leaving it that half an hour, it's going to start to take this form, and then we can come back and we can do our final shape and our final prove. Once your 30 minutes is up, come back. We can see already the dough has it's risen some more. We're going to dust our top with flour again. You really don't want it sticking at this point because what you're looking at is the surface of your bread, and you don't want it to rip because there's nice tension across the top of your loaf, and that's what's going to kind of balloon up as it bakes. So it's going to repeat the phase from before. We're just going to tuck and roll, and each time just try and work this into a tight loaf shape. Once you have your loaf looking something like this, your next phase, we're just going to need to give it our last rise, which will go on for about, it could be 2 hours, it could be 6, probably not more than 6, but you'll see like it's going to rise again. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to use a small amount of baking paper here, which we're going to sit our dough on. That's going to go into the oven when we come to bake. So this is kind of like just a kind of a sheet that we can whip straight out of our tea towel that we're going to raise it in and drop it onto a hot tray from the oven. And that will give us better oven spring. We're also going to put a tray of boiling water into the oven. And I tend to run my oven at maximum. Mine goes up to 250 degrees Celsius. Whatever the highest temperature you can have your oven at, just preheat it an hour before you want to bake, or at least 30 minutes before you want to bake, so it can get up to temperature. So here to allow our ciabatta to prove up rather than sideways. You can see I'm using flour quite liberally at this point because our dough's finished. We just want to cover it in flour to stop any sticking to the cloth or even to the sides of the baking paper, because we're going to peel the sides down to let all the heat get to it. So just plenty of flour, clean tea towel, and a couple of pegs, and just pull it up above and peg both layers of the tea towel, so you kind of make this this cloth wrap that's going to encourage your dough to rise upwards rather than just flowing out to the sides, and this is going to give you a more even loaf shape. So just peg it so that there's a bit of room still in there. There's room to grow for that loaf, and come back, every hour, just come and check that the dough hasn't risen so much that it's being restricted by this cloth. The cloth should kind of guide it up. Enough room to rise, but tight enough to give some support. And once you're happy that you've got that balance, just pop your bread somewhere where you're happy to leave it to rise. I tend to just leave mine on a chopping board for the afternoon. Just keep an eye on it, give it a little prod. If it needs loosening a little, just let the pegs off a bit, and this will give your bread room to rise. And we'll check back when we're ready to go in the oven. A few hours later, it feels like it's definitely grown. I've got a pan of steam, pan of boiling water, which is going to make steam in our oven. I've got a hot pan sat in the oven, so that's going to be at a really, really high temperature. So I'm now going to pop steam in the oven, bring the pan out, and we're just going to take these clips off. I'm going to be quite quick here so we don't lose any heat. But you can see, that looks very much ciabatta-like. And just get this paper off slightly, because you want to have, I'm just going to use this to drop it in. And I have done these before where I've relied just on the flour and it hasn't necessarily worked too well. So there's just a bit of baking paper in the wrap as it proves, just to help it transfer. So I'm going to swap this pan. Steam goes in. Super hot pan. This will go straight onto the bottom there, and it goes straight back in the oven. And that's on maximum temperature. We'll leave it on maximum temperature for 20-25 minutes, and then we'll wind it down to about 190 for another 10-15 minutes. But really just keep an eye on the bread. It's all about the intensity of your oven and how brown, how risen, etc. Just keep an eye on it. And there we have it. 40 minutes in, risen lovely. Give it a tap on the bottom. Sounds hollow. That's done. So that's a ciabatta that we've made with our live sourdough starter that we've kept going since the start of our confinement. It's nearly 40 days ago, and we've been baking with it ever since. We hope that you've enjoyed our video and that you're going to give that a go and make your own homemade ciabatta with a sourdough starter. Please do click like and subscribe. That really helps us to keep making these videos.